let's talk about ripoffs. It has been said that for everything that becomes popular, something else will come along and rip it off. This is true among a lot of things, including cartoons. Granted, it's a little harder than in most media, as cartoons typically take longer to produce, but it still happens. For every show like My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, there will be a Philly Fantasia. It's almost a cardinal rule of animation. However, it also seems to be a cardinal rule that, over time, the original shows will be remembered and the ripoffs will be forgotten. That's why, to this day, shows like Ninja Turtles, Ren and Stimpy, and The Amazing World of Gumball are remembered and loved, while Kung Fu Dino Posse, Schnookums and Meat, and that weird foreign Gumball knockoff has been forgotten. Which brings us to today's topic, the Nutty Squirrels. This is such an obvious ripoff of Alvin and the Chipmunks that it's kind of embarrassing. I mean... Wait, what? No, I looked it up. The Chipmunks came first. What? Oh, you've got to be kidding me! Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize. I've just been informed that, in fact, the Nutty Squirrels came out before the Chipmunks. Kinda. Are you confused yet? Well, don't worry, it'll only get more confusing from here on out. What is this? Some kind of GoBots Transformers deal where the ripoff actually became more popular and outlasted the original by years? Well, it's not exactly that simple. Let's start from the beginning. In the 1950s, there was an Armenian-American songwriter and actor named Ross Bagdasarian Sr. Now, he had mild success in the early 50s. He got an acting gig on Broadway, he wrote the Rosemary Clooney hit Come On to My House. If you're an Alfred Hitchcock fan, you probably recognize him in Rear Window. Then in 1958, under the name Dave Seville, Bagdasarian had a #1 hit with Witch Doctor, a song that made use of sped-up vocals to make them sound squeaky. Eager to repeat the process and make another hit, he created the characters Alvin, Simon, and Theodore, who would come to be known as Alvin and the Chipmunks. Though at first they were called Dave Seville and the Chipmunks, which honestly makes more sense. I mean, if you're not a fan of the Chipmunks, then you'd assume from the title Alvin and the Chipmunks that Alvin isn't one of the Chipmunks, which he certainly is. But to avoid confusion, I'm just gonna call them the Chipmunks for now. Under the Chipmunks name, Bagdasarian scored another top 40 hit with the Chipmunks song Christmas Don't Be Late, and followed it up with 3 full albums of songs with these characters. It was a pretty big deal. And look, I know that a lot of people hate the Chipmunks, can't stand them. And I may be biased because I happen to like the Chipmunks growing up, but I don't think people should entirely dismiss them. The Chipmunks were technically the first virtual band, and they helped pave the way for future virtual bands like Gorillaz, Studio Killers, Death Clock, the Crescendolls, the Archies, Your Favorite Martian, and Hatsune Miku. And while I'm under no means suggesting that any of those bands I listed wouldn't have existed without the Chipmunks, I mean, they deserve some credit. Anyway, they started production on their first TV show, The Alvin Show, in 1960, but at the same time, there was another virtual band of rodents working on their own show. These are the Nutty Squirrels. Haven't heard of them? Neither did I before writing this review! Though I couldn't find much info about them on Wikipedia, AllMusic was thankfully there to help me, as the article there not only was incredibly detailed, but was also clearly written by a fan of the Nutty Squirrels. I didn't even know they had fans! Alvin and the Chipmunks may have done it first, but when it came to cartoon pop rodents, nobody did it better than the Nutty Squirrels? You're biased! The Nutty Squirrels were created by jazz musician Don Elliott and TV composer Sacha Berland. Unlike the Chipmunks, who performed popular music, the Nutty Squirrels favored jazz, bebop in particular. Here's a clip of their lead single, Uh-Oh, Part 1. And here's their second single, Uh-Oh, Part 2. Give the Chipmunks this, despite their lead single also consisting of nonsense sounds, it at least had more nonsense sounds, plus actual lyrics. When Uh-Oh Part 2 made it to number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100, because apparently pre-Beatles pop music was really slow, a TV show was rushed into production, and due to a strange twist of fate when the Alvin show was halted due to struggles involving character design, the Squirrels had their show, The Nutty Squirrels Present, released in 1960, a year before the Alvin show's debut in 1961. So as you can see, it's less of a Transformers GoBots type of deal, and more of a Panama round and round deal. Yeah, any of you guys know that story? In 1984, Van Halen had their hit song Panama. The same year, Rat also had a hit with Round and Round. Now the two songs sound very similar in both the chorus and their riffs, but where it gets crazy is that the album 1984, which features Panama, was released in January 1984, but the single Panama wasn't released until June, and Rat's single Round and Round was released 3 months earlier in March. Of course, if you were to ask anyone nowadays, they'd probably remember Panama a lot better than Round and Round. But screw all that, we're talking about the Nutty Squirrels, specifically their show. How is it? Let's take a look. The show opens with the Nutty Squirrels, of course, as their big hit Uh-Oh Part 2 plays in the background. And the animation quality is exactly what I expected from a crappy knockoff band like this. One thing that you can say about the Chipmunks is that they each have distinct and recognizable personalities. Alvin's the cocky troublemaker, Simon is a smart one, and Theodore is a chubby, easily impressionable one. What are the Nutty Squirrels' personalities? They wear berets. Seriously, that's all the character development you're gonna get. I can barely tell the two apart. They both dress the same, they both have goatees, hell, they don't even have names. Or at least they don't yet. I'll get to that in a few minutes. I guess we do get one thing for development. They like almost killing each other. You silly, you're not supposed to eat the apple. Just think, if this were an Adult Swim show, they would be playing Russian roulette. You silly, you're not... Wait, I already said that. What's the punchline for this setup, you may ask? A friggin' stupid punchline, that's what!
The Nutty Squirrels present
an unrelated cartoon where the Nutty Squirrels never appear. I'm not joking. Part of the reason the Nutty Squirrels Present took such a short time to be released was because the only original animation in it was its intro. Each 6-minute episode consisted mostly of a pre-existing animated short from another country, usually in Eastern Europe, with the Nutty Squirrels only appearing at the beginning to present it. The short would then be given a new soundtrack and dialogue would be dubbed over. It's pretty easy to get a cartoon out there when over half the work is already done for you, but it makes it really friggin' forgettable. I believe this particular short, Tiger Trouble, originates in Russia, though I may be wrong about that. Feel free to correct me in the comments section. The strange thing about it is that the original short didn't appear to have dialogue in the first place, so it's less like they're dubbing dialogue and more like they're just riffing over the original short. Stop that! That's my job! The narrator appears to be doing it in the style of a wildlife documentary, but something feels off.
You may think of Africa as the dark continent.
The dark continent? Damn it, early 60s. I can't tell if you're being racist or not.
And you may go there quite safely and quite comfortably.
Oh, and don't mind the frequent animation glitches, those are rather common here. I guess I can now see why he was calling it the Dark Continent. The animation is so dark that I can't tell what's going on. And I'm 90% sure that the narrator is just making up the dialogue on the spot.
How gently the elephant places him on the ground. Then the elephant goes to sleep. That is the first law of the jungle. Always take a little nap at noon, or whenever you feel tired.
Oh, it gets better. At one point, the narrator doesn't have anything to say, so he just starts naming butterfly species.
The green one, Lopsidus dopsidus, which means lopsided butterfly. That's not a butterfly, of course, that's a tiger.
And thank you for that explanation, but I can see quite fine. And if I couldn't, I'd clearly be blind. So why would I be watching this show?
That tiger certainly is in a nasty mood, isn't he? Perhaps that's because he didn't take his nap today as he should.
Speaking of things that I'd rather be doing right now than watching this, a nap does sound good.
If he would only lie down now, he would soon feel much better.
Okay, what the hell is it with this narrator and taking naps? Is this episode sponsored by a mattress company or something? So the hunter goes and climbs up onto this vine that's obviously a snake. And what a shock, it's a snake. We know about taking naps, but are there other laws of the jungle?
You must take your bath every day. That is the second law of the jungle.
Now that I think of it, this is a really stupid jungle. So he climbs on some rocks that are obviously a hippo, and big shock, it's a hippo. The tiger somehow manages to put the hunter's shirt on. I've seen tigers wearing worse.
No, no, no. Never run from a tiger. When you run, the tiger can smell the odor of fear, and he gets the impression that you are afraid of him.
Could this narrator possibly sound like he gives less of a crap about what he's saying? A monkey ties the tiger's tail to a tree, which... okay, I have no idea how tails work, because I've never had one, but couldn't he just unstick himself easily? Which he does.
The hunter should take this opportunity to give the tiger a candy bar or a sandwich for his lunch and make friends with him. Too late.
Guess this short just answered my earlier question. The narrator somehow just gave even less of a crap about what he's saying. You know, without the narration, this just seemed like your typical old-school slapstick cartoon. Like Tom and Jerry or The Roadrunner, but if they were made on a budget of $20. Most of the moves and punchlines are pretty predictable, though this damn narration certainly doesn't help.
Now this tiger is making the same mistake as the hunter. He is running away, and so the elephant thinks the tiger is afraid. That's the third law of the jungle. Don't run, walk.
It's the only law of the jungle that makes sense, and makes for a pretty good song in my opinion.
Goodbye, children, and remember your laws when you come to Africa. Take your nap, bathe well, and never, never run.
Also, something about blessing the rains. I'm not sure what that's all about. Well, that certainly had a lot to do with the Nutty Squirrels. I almost forgot they were in this show that's named after them. This is fitting, considering that Elliot and Berlin allegedly had very little to do with the creation of this show. I would talk about more episodes of the Nutty Squirrels Present, but that's all I can find. Of the 150 plus episodes aired on the Nutty Squirrels Present from 1960 to 1961, I could only find one of them, and even it was eventually removed from YouTube. Not because of copyright, but because this show is crap! Because of this, I don't really have a lot to go by in judging the entire series, but this one episode didn't even seem like it was trying. It has nothing to do with the characters in the show's title, the dialogue seems entirely unnecessary, and it's basically just a much less funny version of Mystery Science Theater 3000. There's a reason why this show only lasted one season and was quickly forgotten afterwards. It's almost so bad it's good. I'd even recommend checking it out if the one episode I found hadn't been removed. But honestly, even if it did feature original animation, would it have been any less forgotten than it was? There's not much material to work with here. Apart from a different music style, the Nutty Squirrels do nothing to stand out or distinguish themselves from the Chipmunks in any way, and just sound like a cheap, cash-grab knockoff, which they were. The Nutty Squirrels weren't the only Chipmunks ripoff, but they certainly were the most infamous. And after a slew of other songs, one of which was a Christmas song, seem familiar, and 2 more albums, one of which was a Beatles cover album, again seem familiar, Elliot and Berlin split in 1964. And that's where the Nutty Squirrels story ends. Just kidding, it keeps going. In 1976, over a decade after the Nutty Squirrels disbanded, session musician Bob Millsap brought the group back and gave them the names Shirley and Squirrely, a reboot so successful that it doesn't even have its own AllMusic biography. The hell? With all the info I found about the Nutty Squirrels on both this site and others, why isn't there anything about this reboot? Unless Bob Millsap sued to have it taken down, like what Bryan Adams did with AllMusic. I've only found a little about Shirley and Squirrely, but the weird thing is that I can't even tell if there is a connection between them and the Nutty Squirrels. The Wikipedia page claims that they changed their name for legal reasons, but I can't find any other sources that confirm this. And apparently it was made without the involvement of either Elliot or Berlin, and under a different record label. Not only that, but they aren't even jazz. Their first single, Hey Shirley, This Is Squirrely, was based on the CB radio trucker craze. You know, that thing that was supposed to be a thing, but was totally not a thing. So as far as I know, this could either be a reboot, or it could be a completely different duo of singing squirrels. Which, if it's completely unrelated, what, you didn't learn your lesson from the Nutty Squirrels? But if it is a reboot, that would be like if someone were to reboot Gorillaz without the involvement of Damon Albarn and Jamie Hewlett, with a completely different art style, different characters, different music style, under a different record label, and with a different band name, and we're still claiming it was a reboot of Gorillaz. Of course, it doesn't help that some of the sources say they originated in the 70s, and others say that they originated in 1995. But now that we're on the subject, let's talk about Shirley and Squirrely, because, and I kid you not, they were somehow trying even less than the Nutty Squirrels. On their second album, they added a third member named, no joke, Melvin. Melvin? Melvin? Really?! That's literally 2 letters away from Alvin. It's so obvious that this isn't even the only Chipmunks knockoff to use the name Melvin. Bob Rivers did it better.
Melvin! Relax, old man.
People saw through this, and after only one other album in 1981, which was a live album, however that works, Shirley, Squirrely, and Melvin were quickly forgotten. The Chipmunks, meanwhile, enjoyed a lot more success. After Bagdasarian's death in 1972, his son, Ross Bagdasarian Jr., continued the project with albums, TV specials, one of them with Will Smith, 3 TV shows, several cinematic and direct-to-video movies, and the project is about to have its 60th anniversary and is still going strong. And Ross Jr. seems to be aware of the Nutty Squirrels' existence. Hell, the first live-action Chipmunks movie makes a jab at them during the end credits. But back on topic. If I wanted a cartoon about a duo of squeaky-voiced anthropomorphic rodents, I would stick with Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, thank you very much. As for the Nutty Squirrels, they can suck my nuts! Pun intended.
Chipmunks roasting on an open fire, hot sauce dripping from their toes. Yuletide squirrels, fresh filleted by the choir. They poked hot skewers through their nose.
Always take a little nap at noon.